We kind of do that by any means necessary. So sometimes that's conferences and research, sometimes that's cultural exchanges and picnics, sometimes that's barbecues and roasting hogs, sometimes it's media and exhibitions. So all kinds of different strategies that try to get people to dream differently about the future of their communities. I will share a little bit about who I am. So like many of you, I have deep relationships both to rural and urban communities. I'm a 12th generation Grayson Countyan and the steward of a 100-acre preserve and historic site in Grayson Springs. I'm also a Louisville resident and currently live in the most linguistically diverse and racially diverse zip code in Kentucky. And living between these two worlds has taught me a lot about bridging divides, and I've also, often been reminded that the goal can't be to try and bring someone to your side or even try to change their mind. But the goal is to just find commonalities and richness and joy in relationships that matter to you, with people that matter to you. So, this has really been applied to the work that we do. I found that the only way to advance common ground is through openness and respect and vulnerability. And that in my experience, relationships really thrive, especially new relationships, when folks have an opportunity to share a story, to share a meal, to do some work together, and to really just spend time together, not focused on a problem that needs to be solved, but focused on one another and deep listening, as Mary said. So in that spirit, I'm gonna invite y'all all to close your eyes. I can kind of see you, so do it. Take a deep breath. I invite you to imagine the place you loved best in childhood. Maybe it's a landscape, maybe it's a building, maybe it's really a place that's just made by a person that you spent time with. Let yourself be there for a moment. What's the light like? What does it smell like? How does it feel? Take another deep breath. And as you do, I invite you to think about how that place made you who you are. Bell Hooks, Kentuckian, often says that we are always the person that we were in childhood. I think about place and the way that that shapes us because, in part, it imbues us with our superpowers, the things that are unique to us, the way that we relate to the world, the way that we know how to process pain and joy, right? How we know how to love people. But we also internalize stories about the places that we're from and what that means about what we're capable of, and sometimes that imposes limitation, right? And it takes a lot of work to move past that, even though you know that you've been imbued with all of this beauty and life force from the place you're from. Well, now I invite you to imagine just coming together with a couple hundred other people from a region, from a state, from a geography, or from some other shared experience, to share those stories of where you come from, who you are, what you've been, and who you could become if you imagined a different story, if you told a different story to one another about what it meant to be where you were from and what was possible if you all acknowledged your shared future. So y'all can keep your eyes closed if you're enjoying your place, or you can come back to the room. But I share that because that's really the work we do at the Kentucky Rural Urban Exchange. I forgot that I had slides. We founded Rux in 2014 as a partnership between Art of the Rural and Apple Shop, which is a 54-year-old media and storytelling institution in southeastern Kentucky. And we started this work because we recognize a need to connect the distinct regions of Kentucky so that we could move beyond the sort of localism that, full of pride of place, has uplifted our communities but also held us back as a state. And we did this work knowing that relationships were the answer, that by building stronger relationships across sectors and regions, that we could not just advance statewide collaboration, but strengthen whole fields of practice and spark entirely new ways of thinking. We also knew that the shortest distance between two people is a story. And in Kentucky, that's a very short distance. So we set out to use the cultural strategies that were familiar to all of us to connect people across difference. Today, we are Kentucky's only creative leadership program using place-based cultural strategies to connect folks across geography, across sector, across difference, across ideology. And to date, we have hosted 23 community intensives in 12 host communities. This weekend, we'll finish our 9th year of programming in Estill County. Over that time, we partnered with 133 partners across the state to build this work out. We work through multi-year partnership. We work at the speed of trust. And we've trained 275 Kentucky artists, educators, farmers, attorneys, factory workers, electeds, retirees, students, folks from all the different backgrounds who have a shared commitment to Kentucky and to imagining a different future if we relied a little more on one another. These folks are also from 60 counties, so this map is not fully up to date, but the blue spaces are where our network lives now. The green spaces are where folks may have been when they came through the program. So let me tell you a little bit about how this strategy works. I think it's pretty simple. Many of you all do something similar. We begin each year with an open application process. Folks are peer selected by alumni, and once they are selected, they become part of a RUX cohort that gathers at 3 communities across the state each year. You commit to 2 years when you enter the program, so over 2 years, that's 18 days of immersive residence in different communities across the state. You'll go to at least 4, maybe 5 regions. And because we work with communities for years in the planning process, and we go to each community twice, you experience, hopefully, at least one community twice, and you get to experience the way that a community's telling of its own story evolves over time, and the ways that the questions that you asked last year might spark a different solution, a new way of thinking, the inclusion of a narrative that was hidden before. We do this work alongside our Currency of Connection curriculum, so that focuses on people, place, and partnership, and giving Kentuckians the skills and competencies they need to work interculturally, but also to dream differently for their communities, to practice civic imagination, and to strengthen their sort of bridging capacity so that they have a stronger muscle for collaboration in general, and particularly for collaboration with folks that are coming from a different background than them. We think that's like the single most important soft skill in innovation. And we do all of this work through relationships because we believe that bridge building is a relational practice, and that cultural strategies, storytelling in particular, is really at the center of what's necessary to build authentic relationships and trust and shared vision. Let's see what's on the screen here. So here's some examples of how we do it, right? One of them is right here in Bowling Green, 2 folks who are sharing the Bosnian coffee tradition with us and reminding us of how we have to slow down. We have to really enjoy something to build deep relationship. Another is a square dance at a treatment facility. We do our work in communities with the folks who are most affected. So if we're going to talk about the opioid epidemic in Eastern Kentucky, we're going to have that conversation with people who are in recovery. And we're not just going to talk to them. We're going to share a meal with them. We're going to dance with them. We're going to have fun. This one down here is in Hart County, Denison Farm. Y'all might know that place. They have a farm market. Those are farmers telling us about how they took a generational family farm from commodity agriculture into distributed diverse agriculture, farm stands, CSAs, all of that. And there are farmers in the audience from all over the state who went home and were able to replicate some of those ideas. This other panel here is a conversation among military veterans from across the state. It's a narrative stage, so they're just talking as the experts of their lived experience about their time in service, their time since, what they think the opportunities for working with folks who are veterans in Kentucky are, what they think some of the stigma around that is. And I think it really helped people, particularly in that room, some really progressive folks who maybe had ungenerous views of folks in service, rethink, their perspectives. And that's really what it's all about, right, is putting people in a room together to reconsider what they believe to be hard truths, and instead to listen really deeply to other people's lived experiences, and to trust that we had created an environment in the room together where folks could rely on people expecting good intention, and where we weren't going to avoid conflict, but we were going to practice something called principled struggle, right? That we were all here for a shared mission. Our mission was to build interdependence across the state of Kentucky. And we can't do that by staying in our silo. We have to reach across. We have to listen deeply. We have to share generously. We have to be truly vulnerable. And we have to be willing to share our best ideas, knowing that someone's not just going to cart them off and do them in the next county over, but they're going to do them with you together, because there's a relationship of accountability, and you're going to see this person for years to come. So here's the core curriculum that we work through as we're having place-based experiences in communities. So the kinds of things you saw on the last slide. We're also leading people through a facilitated experience with these methodologies, core values, and this ethos. So we work in a distributed leadership structure. That means when folks come through the leadership program, when they graduate, they're eligible to join the steering committee and to become the facilitators of that experience. So now this program, 9 years in, is run entirely by folks who are alumni of the program. We've also replicated in Minnesota, and with a pretty tremendous support from foundations up there, been able to work in learning exchange for 2 years with a group of Minnesotans and folks from Native nations that share that geography, to teach them how we've done it here, but also to ask them at every step of the way, what's the cultural context that's different where you are that needs to shift when you apply this model there? So they've now worked with 32 fellows from 16 counties and spent time in host communities in the White Earth Nation, Winona, and St. Paul and Monoman. So a pretty incredible experience to share this with other folks. Let's see. So now, 9 years in, we have, as shared where we've been hosted, 23 different intensives, 12 host communities this year in Louisville, Owensboro, and Estill County. And in each place, like I said, we work for multiple years with host partners to, again, like I said, uplift local assets, but also address complexities and tell the truth about, what your challenges are in a community, and how you can work together with folks from across the state to apply what they've learned, maybe from their mistakes, to move your community forward. And so it's really, you hear about trust-based philanthropy, but you don't hear about trust-based leadership very often. That's at the center of what we're trying to do, is understand that, especially in a place like Kentucky, if we want to build a statewide strategy, if we want to build our collective capacity for impact, that we have to build relationships that move at the speed of trust, that are accountable to one another, where folks continue to show up for one another over many years, not just in times of economic opportunity, but also in those, sharing resources across the state's important, but also in times of devastation. And that practice has really become one of the core strengths of RUCS. So, when the flood happened in eastern Kentucky last summer, we raised $20,000 within a week. Let's see, what else do y'all need to know? I think in short, I'll just say two things. One, we've been really passionate about evaluation the whole time, and that's helped us to tell our story both through individual stories of transformation, but also in the ways that these workshops in our curriculum are spurring new practices. So Civic Lex came out of RUCS, Black Soil or Better Nature was spurred at a RUCS weekend here in Bowling Green, actually, and the Mountain Training Network, which is investing in former coal miners to become workers in hospitality industries, in innovation, and in arts and culture. All of those strategies came out of our Abundant Futures Labs. So basically we bring 3 people together who come from very different backgrounds, different geographies, different sectors, to just consult on one another's ideas. They do that with a different group each year. By the time they come out of it, they have not only a project idea that's really well thought out, but a network of folks from all across the state who have resources that can help them enact it. So yeah, I think that's the core of what we do in RUCS. I think The important thing to take home is, that we really believe that leadership is measured by the depth of your relationship to people and places. That if you believe that too, that's something that you can practice in your own strategies in your organizations. And if you do that, I promise you that you could radically grow social capital. That folks that you can't reach yet, maybe because they come from a different background, maybe because they come from a different ideology, will come to you because people are attracted to light, right? And so if you're making something that's important in your community, that's bringing folks together who haven't been working together, it has a magnetic potential. It brings more folks to it, and from there, real innovation grows. So we believe at Art of the World that the future depends on such work, and we welcome you all to join us.